The North Sea in winter is not a forgiving place. Waves crash against wooden hulls. Icy winds cut through even the thickest wool, and the spray freezes on beards and clothing within seconds. Imagine a medieval longship, 60 feet long, carrying 50 men on a voyage to raid, trade, or explore. There is no cabin, no enclosed deck, no fire to warm the crew. For modern sailors, these conditions would be fatal in hours. Yet medieval seafarers, Vikings, Anglo-Saxons, and Northern mariners crossed these waters for months at a time. How? The secret wasn't fire. Ships were entirely open, constructed from overlapping oak planks, ropes, and tar. Every surface was flammable. A single spark could ignite the vessel in seconds. Hearths or braziers were impossible. Instead, survival depended on engineering, clothing, and cooperation. Medieval crews developed sophisticated layered clothing systems, often using multiple grades of wool, animal furs, and water-resistant skins. Every layer had a purpose: insulation, wind resistance, or moisture management. Daily rituals involved sewing sleeves closed at the wrist with wax thread, creating airtight seals to trap heat. When the day's work ended, warriors would cut themselves free with knives, an uncomfortable but necessary routine. Sleeping arrangements were equally clever. Crews shared communal sleeping spaces, often 2 or 3 men, in a single insulated fur bag. Body heat created a miniature climate within, raising temperatures 15 to 20 degrees above the icy air. Ship's sails, lowered and draped over the deck, acted as tents, trapping warmth from dozens of bodies. Those who kept watch would rotate, ensuring the sleeping space never cooled entirely. Food was carefully planned for survival without fire. Preserved fish hardtack and congealed porridge supplied 2,000 to 3,000 calories daily. Porridge, prepared with butter and salt before departure, could be eaten cold or mixed with water. Dried fish remained edible for months, while fermented dairy and hard bread provided nutrients and variety. The key was planning for both heat and energy, knowing the body's demands in freezing conditions. These strategies were supported by shore-based infrastructure. Coastal surveys reveal hundreds of winter camps along Scandinavian, British, and Greenlandic coasts. These sites included hearths, workshops, and storage facilities. Ships were not meant for constant habitation. They were tools for mobility, not comfort. Fire and cooking were reserved for land, keeping crews safe at sea. Even psychological resilience played a role. Crews engaged in storytelling, games, and competitions to maintain morale. Mental endurance became as important as physical warmth, preventing despair during long weeks on frozen waters. Medieval seafarers thrived not through brute strength, but through strategic planning, technology, and social cooperation. They balanced the dangers of the open sea with the protection of clothing, diet, sleeping systems, and shore-based support. The North Sea may have been ruthless, but these crews transformed vulnerability into survival, turning the harshest environment in Europe into a path for exploration, trade, and conquest. In the next part, we will explore how disease and hygiene shaped survival on these ships, revealing the hidden strategies that allowed crews to endure sickness, lice, and contaminated water without collapsing their missions. Winter in the camp brought not only cold, but also an invisible threat: disease. Even the strongest warrior could fall ill with fever, flu, or infection if living conditions were poor. Medieval people did not know about germs, but the experience of generations made survival possible. In freezing days, water would freeze and fresh food would spoil quickly. Everyone understood that sick or unclean conditions could wipe out the entire camp. The first rule of the camp was cleanliness and order. Sleeping areas were carefully cleared. Snow was managed around tents, and human waste was collected in separate pits far from shelters and fires. Every evening, adults checked children and elders for signs of illness, paying attention to wounds, bed sores, and colds. Special attention was paid to water and food. The water source feeding the camp was carefully guarded. Water was drawn from upstream streams to avoid contamination, and snow was melted and boiled over the fire when possible. Food was prepared in advance and stored in elevated woven chests to keep out mice and rats. Salted meat and smoked fish were staples. They lasted longer, did not spoil, and prevented food poisoning. Equally important was personal hygiene. Washing with cold water became a daily ritual, and hands and faces were wiped with linen towels. Each person had their own cloth to avoid cross-contamination. Hair was braided or covered with hoods to prevent lice. Elders and leaders regularly inspected everyone, preventing infestations of fleas and other parasites. Some of the most remarkable measures were social and communal. Cold forced people to sleep together for warmth, but illness spread easily. To combat this, they created a system of daily watchers. One person each day would check neighbors, help the weak, and isolate anyone showing signs of sickness. The sick were kept in special tents at the edge of the camp, with separate fires and supervision, preventing contagion from spreading. Psychology also played a role in survival. Games, songs, and storytelling by the fire entertained, reduced stress, and strengthened morale. People knew that despair and panic could weaken the body more than cold or hunger. The camp functioned as a single organism. Everyone understood their responsibilities, followed cleanliness rituals, and monitored food and water. Thanks to this discipline, hundreds of people survived the harshest winters without catastrophic outbreaks. In this way, the medieval winter camp became a fortress not only against frost and wind, but also against disease. Experience, careful observation, and strict rules allowed people to survive in conditions that seemed nearly impossible, creating a system where each person's health depended on discipline, organization, and collective intelligence. The frost grew harsher with each passing day, turning the camp into a frozen realm. The wind tore through the snowdrifts along the tents, forcing the inhabitants to move quickly and stay close to the fires. Yet, even in this cold storm, medieval people found ways to maintain health and morale. After weeks in the camp, they knew survival depended not only on food and warmth, but also on discipline, sanitation, and psychological resilience. Each morning began with a mandatory health check. Elders walked through the tents, inspecting the sick and giving advice on skin care and respiratory health. Diseases spread rapidly in enclosed spaces, and a single mistake could trigger an outbreak. This is why the duty schedule was strict. Every member knew when to clean the area, monitor the water, and watch over the ill. Water remained the most dangerous element. It was collected from nearby streams and lakes, but even frost did not fully kill microbes. People relied on tried-and-true methods: boiling, adding herbs, freezing, and slowly thawing to purify it. Fires near the tents served not only for warmth, but also for processing water and preparing food without risking infection. Supplies prepared in advance became even more valuable. Salted meat, dried fish, hard bread, all stored in raised chests protected from rodents and moisture. Camp rules developed. Never share food with strangers, wash hands thoroughly after animal contact, and clean clothing from snow and mud. Survival depended not only on physical protection. Psychological resilience and morale were critical. Children played by the fires. Adults recounted stories of previous winters, helping sustain community spirit. Daily routines included small rituals, songs, games, shared meals. Even simple tasks like cleaning tents in snow became collective actions, reinforcing a sense of order and control over the chaotic outside world. As night fell and frost peaked, villagers gathered in the central camp circle. Specialized warm zones around fires allowed people to avoid freezing entirely. Those who were weaker or sick slept close to the hearths, while stronger men and women occupied outer rows, protecting the camp from predators and the wind. Hygiene culture continued to be key. Weekly washing and daily inspections of hair and skin served both physical and psychological purposes. People knew their health and lives depended on self-discipline. In this harsh world, understanding of disease causes was minimal, yet practical methods, boiling water, hand washing, isolating the sick, save lives. Thus, the medieval winter camp not only survived but became a model of a complex survival system. Discipline, sanitation, rational resource use, and collective psychology create a structure where every detail mattered. Even in the coldest, harshest winters, people preserved warmth, health, and spirit, turning brutal winter into a test that strengthened and united the community. Winter had fully enveloped the medieval camp. Frost pierced through layers of clothing, and the snow creaked under every step. Thanks to previous measures, boiling water, storing food in snow and salt, and strict hygiene rules, the community had learned to survive, but new challenges arose. Invisible threats of disease, fatigue, and human error. At night, when most slept on straw and furs, the elder patrolled the camp, checking clothing, gloves, and water containers. Heat alone is not enough, he reminded the young. Understanding where danger hides and acting before it spreads, that is what ensures survival. He taught filtering water, adding medicinal herbs, and separating clean sources from contaminated ones. Night patrols became routine, inspecting storage areas and sleeping quarters. Every detail mattered. Even a small mistake could lead to the spread of disease. One night, a boy noticed tiny tracks in the snow, likely mice. Immediate measures were taken. Storage was reinforced, traps set, barriers installed. Within a week, illness decreased and food remained safe. People realized survival required fighting not only the cold but also unseen microscopic enemies. Rotation of sleeping places became a key practice. Every week, families swapped positions to balance warmth, ventilation, and hygiene. Children and the elderly occupied the most protected spots, while strong adults guarded the perimeter. Discipline and collective responsibility strengthened. By midwinter, the camp had become almost a self-sustaining community. Fires burned continuously, water was boiled, food remained preserved, and routines were strictly followed. The main threat was no longer the cold. It was human fatigue and carelessness. To address this, the elder created a night circle, pairing young people with experienced members for monitoring and routine training. The system worked. Illnesses became rare and morale stayed high. Weekly meetings for sharing stories and experiences strengthened the psychological health of the group. People understood that survival depended not only on warmth and food, but also on constant attention, shared responsibility, and care for every member.